So let's take a quick look at what we learned in this course. Well, we learned there's 7 notes on the piano: A, B, C, D, E, F and G. And these notes are repeated all the way up the piano. And the higher you move up, the higher the pitch, the sound. We learned that middle C is the most important note to learn, and that we use this note to create our first major scale, which is C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. So there are 7 white notes. We learned about octaves and intervals. So if we look at the interval from a C to another note of C, there are 8 notes. And we call this an interval of an octave. And we can move up the piano in octaves. Other intervals we'll use is an interval of a second, a third, a fourth, a fifth, a sixth, a seventh and an eighth, which is our octave. In fact, when improvising, moving in thirds is always very nice. We also learned about half steps and whole steps on the piano. So looking at our C major scale, there are 12 notes within the 2 Cs, including the black notes. And we learned a little scale moving up and down in half steps. And the reason it's important to be able to move up and down the piano in half steps is because when we're building our chords using the big small technique, we're going to be counting in half steps. Now we learned about the black notes, which are used as sharps and flats. So we learned that from any note on the piano, if we want to sharpen it, we move up a half step. So from the note of F, if we want to sharpen it, we just move up a half step, and this will be F sharp. If we want to flatten one of the notes on the piano, then we have to move down a half step. So from this A, if we wanted to flatten it, we would move down a half step. And all these black notes have 2 jobs. They're sharps and they're flats. So this one here, yes, it is an A flat, because if you're on A and you move down a half step, you've flattened the A, so it's an A flat. But it's also a G sharp, because if you're on the G, and you want to sharpen a G, you go up a half step and land on this same note. So it's an A flat and it's a G sharp. Now, these 12 notes we've looked at, and we've used our little half step scale. 12 notes, 7 white notes and 5 black notes. You can create a major scale from every single one of those notes using the major scale formula. We created a C major scale. And we learned there's 7 notes in the C major scale. C, D, E, F, G, A, B. And then back to our root note of C. We also learned we can build a chord from every single one of those notes. And when we're building chords in a major scale, there's a particular order of major chords and minor chords. Now a chord is when we hit 3 or more notes at the same time. And we use the big small technique to be able to create and build major chords and minor chords. A major chord is built by moving up 4 half steps followed by 3 half steps. So from our chosen note of C, we'd move up 1, 2, 3, 4, followed by 1, 2, 3 to create our major chord. So a big interval followed by a small interval. To create a minor chord, we switch it around. We do the small interval first and then the big one. So from the C, we'd move up 3 half steps followed by 4 half steps. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's a minor chord. And we can do this from any note, just using the big small technique. We can even do it from a black note. From this F sharp, if we want to create a major chord, we move up 4 half steps, followed by 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. This is an F sharp major chord. So it will work from any single white or black note on the piano. So back to our C major scale, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and then back to C. We can build a chord from each note, and we use the big small technique to build these chords. And all we have to remember is the order of major and minor chords. So in any major scale, the order will be major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished. So because we know that formula, we then could build the chords of our C major scale. So we start on the first note of our C major scale, which was C. We know it's got to be a major chord. We use the big small technique to find a C major chord. And we do this from every note. So the next note up we know is a minor chord. This is a D minor. Then it will be an E minor, an F major, a G major, an A minor, a B diminished, and then we're back at our root chord. Major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished. Always the same for every single major scale. So now that we've made a chord for every note of the C major scale, we can number the chords, and we just number them simply 1 to 7. So chord 1 of a C major scale will be C major. Chord 2 will be D minor. Chord 3 will be E minor. Chord 4 will be major. Chord 5 will be G major. Chord 6 will be A minor. Chord 7 will be B diminished. And we're back at our root chord of C major. So now we've numbered all our chords in the C major scale, we can create a chord progression. And one of the most famous ones out there that's used in hundreds of songs is the 1, 5, 6, 4. 1, C major, 5, G major, 6, A minor, and 4, F major. But you can create your own chord progressions. You just have to pick any chords in any order. And it doesn't have to be 4 chords. 4 chords are famously used in lots of songs though. So you could pick your own progression. You could decide to do a 2, a 3, a 6, and a 5. Because you know all your chords of a C major scale. So let's do 2, 3, 6, 5. Now if you Googled 2, 3, 6, 5 chord progression, you'd probably find that somebody out there has used that on a song. Surely someone's used these 4 chords. You can't copyright chord progressions because there's only a certain amount of, chord progressions within these 7 chords. So chord progressions, there's lots of famous ones you can Google, but you can create your own, and they don't have to be 4 chords. Very famous 3 chord progression is the 1, 4, 5, used in lots of rock. All that is a C, an F, and a G. So 1, 4, 5 chord progression. Also used in the 12-bar blues. Anyway, I'm getting carried away. But that's just a 1, 5, 4 chord progression. So this is the crux of it. This is where we wanted to get to. We can create our own chord progressions in the C major scale. So next we did look at the chord family. This is just to help us when we improvise or when we're writing songs. Some chords have preferred chords they do like to go to. Don't have to, but if ever you get stuck, you can always go there and it will sound good. And the most famous one is that chord 5 would always like to go to chord 1. It's called a cadence, perfect cadence. So in a C major scale, chord 5 is G major and chord 1 is C. It's how most songs end. Sounds great. You have the tension of the G and you resolve it to 1. Sounds sounds even better when you use inversions. But we learned in the chord family that lots of these chords have favourites, and we had a look at what they were. After this, we looked at chord inversions, and chord inversions are so important. They really change the way your chords sound. They are not easy to master. It truly does take time and effort. You're not going to recognise chord inversions overnight. It takes a while. When I play a C major, I'll tend to play it like this. That's how I recognise a C major triad, because I tend to like to play it in first inversion. You probably won't recognise this as a C major yet, because this is what a C major looks to you right now, because you've only just learnt it. So this takes time. All the inversion is because you've got 3 notes in your chord, there are 3 ways you can play it. So this is root position with the C in the bottom. But if you put the C at the top, this is first position or first inversion. If you put the E at the top, this is second inversion or second position. So a good way to look at it is take whatever chord you're on, which is the C. It will always have 3 notes, C, E and G. You can play it in root position, first position or second position. And a great exercise is to play these all the way up the piano. Root, first, second, root, first, second, root, first, second. And eventually you'll start to recognise the C major chord in different inversions. A really good exercise is to look at a chord progression, any chord progression, but we looked at the 1, 5, 6, 4. And try out that chord progression using different inversions. A favourite one of mine is, instead of moving from C major to F major like this, so C major in root position to F major in root position, it's much better to move from C major in root position to F major in second position, because you're only moving 2 fingers, C major, F major, C major, F major. And these will take a while to master, so you've just got to experiment. I've given you in the Chord Jammer ebook all the different inversions of all the C major scale chords. So you can practice, just pick 2 of the chords, practice moving between the 2 using different positions and different inversions, and just practice. So time and practice on your inversions, it will really pay off. So then we looked at improvising melody, and all you do to create a melody or just make up a melody is use the notes of the major scale you're working in. We are working in a C major scale, so it's all the white notes. I gave you some exercises and tips, and we did it over the 1, 5, 6, 4 chord progression. So to start with, I said just play the first 5 notes of a C major scale over the top of them. Another one I gave you was that the 1st and 5th notes of the scale will sound good over any chord in that scale. So use the pedal. So when creating a melody, the 1st and 5th are always great options for you. Now, I did give you a tip that the 4th and 7th note of the major scale are the weakest notes. So in a C major, of your 7 white notes that are available to you, the F and the B are not going to sound great as primary notes. Just use them as passing notes. Let me show you what I mean. If we're trying the 1, 5, 6, 4 chord progression and we're just making up a melody, picking up any notes, it sounded quite pleasant. But I wasn't using F and B too much. Let me do that again and use F and B. That doesn't sound as good. Not to me anyway, you might love it. Some of my kids that I teach love using the F and B just because they like to go against what I say. So just don't use F and B at all to start with if you don't want to. You know, that all sounds great. Now, after I showed you how to improvise melody using the white notes and a few tips to help you along the way, we did take a look at the major scale formula so that we can switch keys. And to do that is difficult. There are 12 keys because there's 7 white notes and 5 black notes, so there's 12 keys. And it takes some time to switch between keys because you've got a lot of work to do. All that work we did in C, if we want to do this in another key, we have to go through everything again. So let's have a look at an F. If we did it in F, first of all, we've got to use the major scale formula to work out what the notes are. So we go whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. Okay, so we only have one black note, that's good, the B flat. And then we have to build a chord from each note. Now, we know it's major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished. So chord 1 is a major. We can use the big, small technique to work this out. Chord 2 is a minor. Chord 3 is a minor. Chord 4 is a major. Chord 5 is a major. Chord 6 is a minor. And chord 7 is a diminished. And then we're back to our F. And don't try and remember that, it will take you some time. You have to work out the notes of the F major scale first, and then you have to build each of those chords using major, minor, minor, major, minor, minor, diminished. And now you have your 7 notes of your F major scale, you can create a chord progression, and then you can improvise over the top of it using the notes of the F major scale, which are all the white notes except for the B, which is a B flat. So it's not too difficult a one. So F major could be one you try. G major is good to try because it's only got 1 black note. D major's okay. It's got 2 black notes in it, but this is just for you to take your time and practice with. So you have to build the major scale, then you have to work out the chords of that major scale, and it's at that point you can then create a chord progression. And if you're creating a chord progression in the F major scale, when you improvise over the top of it, you use the notes of an F major scale, which is all the white notes and a B flat. So one of the last things we looked at was different types of chords. I gave you some formulas to be able to build some funky chords, which you can do from any note. But the one thing you have to do is look at the formula for each note. So for a C, you have to look at the formula for a C major scale. So C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and then back to C. And they're just numbered 1 to 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, back to 1. So we built, using the formula, all these chords from a C. We looked at a major chord, a minor chord, a diminished chord. We looked at a sus2, we looked at a sus4, we looked at a 6th chord, and a minor 6th chord, and then we looked at a bunch of 7th chords. So we looked at the major 7, which is very jazzy, the dominant 7, which is very bluesy, the minor 7, and the minor 7 flat 5. Very advanced chords. This is just for you to have a play with when you feel ready. So you don't need to jump into this yet. This is just extra information from you. But if you are going to use some of these chords in your chord progressions, it's not going to work very well just knowing how to build them from a C. So if you wanted to build all of these chords from an F, for instance, then you need to know the F major scale. So you write your formula using the F major scale, which is F, G, A, B flat, C, D, E, F. And now you can use all of these chord formulas from an F. So major chord, minor chord, diminished chord. We also had our sus2 and sus4. Of course, the B is flattened in an F major scale. We had the sixth chord and a minor sixth. And we also had all of those sevenths. So an F major 7 would look like this. Dominant 7, minor 7, minor 7, flat 5. And it would just take you time because you've got to use the major scale formula to work out your new major scale and then use the formula to make these chords from an F. And then you've got to do it all again for another note. So if, say, A was the next chord in your chord progression, you've got to do it again from an A. So you just follow the process, but it takes time. And of course, come into the Facebook group and I can help you with anything you're struggling with. The last thing we looked at was rhythm. So this is when we take our chords and we just make them sound a bit funkier. So instead of just playing them all in root position, which after a while becomes a little bit monotonous, we learn how to play maybe a bit of a pulse. Yeah. And then we learn how to play some different rhythms with our 4 beats in the bar. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. I gave you a few examples of them. And then even at the end, I did some more difficult ones using 8th notes. So we have to say and when we count. So it was 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And there was a couple of more difficult rhythms there as well. And again, this is only for you to have a go at when you feel confident and ready. Everybody learns at different speeds. It could take somebody a week to get there. It could take somebody else months. So you just have to do it at your own pace. And I also added in an arpeggio rhythm video as well. So take a look at that because there's some beautiful broken patterns. So I've now covered everything we learned in the course and it's just a process. You have to know the major scale you're working in. You then have to build all the chords of that major scale. You then pick a chord progression, which is going to be the basis of your song, the building blocks of your song, the chords, and then you're going to use the notes of the major scale to create a melody. And that's pretty much what you're doing. And then if you want to switch to a different key, you have to use the major scale formula to work out the notes of your new major scale and then repeat the process.